welcome everyone. Tonight's lightning talk is by John Szeder. John is an industry veteran with nearly 3 decades of experience. He has held leadership positions, including VP of Engineering, FRAC CTOs, and has worked in many prestigious gaming companies such as Zynga, Game Data Pro, Digital Chocolate, just to name a few.
Mhm.
John brings deep expertise in engineering leadership and production workflows, and his current focus is on workflow automation with AI to accelerate game dev pipeline. So we are here today, John. Very excited to hear from you.
Hello,
But
Cloud and various other people. My name's John Szeder. I've done a lot of crazy stuff. I've been very early to a lot of marketplaces. I was a mobile game developer in North America when there were almost 10 of us, and have done a lot of really unusual stuff. And I was asked to come and give a conversation on AI stuff. So I started off saying, well, let's talk about nearly unexpected use cases of AI for the average studio, right? And then I thought about that some more. And then I realized one of the real challenges with that, hold on a second here. I've got the screen sharing thing up. There it is. All right. Is that if you go and take a look at what people are saying about AI, everybody's basically saying the same thing. So I thought about it for a couple minutes, and then I realized, you know what? I don't want to give this presentation. I don't want to talk about the average use cases and the nearly acceptable and the nearly unusual things. I think that I want to go a little off the rails. And I think that I'm going to go do that today because everybody has these conversations. I'm as guilty of it as anybody, going out there and figuring out how to say things that are confrontational and engaging on LinkedIn to build audience. And it's kind of fun and interesting. But at the same time, I also think it's kind of the wrong message. If we could sit down and spend a bunch of time going over what are the best tools for writing code, what are the best things for doing images, how are you using AI to test your stuff, and cute little Wally in the middle there is because I couldn't find an image that was small enough to fit in with the top 10 something. But you can use AI to supplement the existing stuff that you're doing today as much as you want, and that's well and good. And you know what is, you don't need a 10-minute conversation on what that is, because at the end of the day, everyone's using AI the same way. Everybody's saying, okay, I can save 10% here, I could do this 10% faster there. And it's all about reducing the cost and saying this is how we're going to do it cheaper and faster. And it's you're using it in the same way. And it's like everything is a hammer. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And AI is a big hammer right now. So instead, I thought we would do something a little different. And I'm going to talk about something else. I'm going to be telling you what we should be doing instead of what we're actually doing. So I've renamed the presentation, and I called it Put the AI in Craziness. And for anybody who wants to learn how to be 10% better at your current job, I deeply apologize. I promise a 50% refund to any cash paid to me for attending this presentation, should you have done so, if you are not completely satisfied with the conversation at the end. So that being said, for the people who are sticking around for the rest of the journey, buckle up, because here we go. I want to start with the automobile. This is a car engine. Anybody here know how you measure the output of an automobile engine? Nobody? It's measured in horsepower.
yeah,
And this disturbs me greatly, right? If you take a look at how you're measuring things, they're basically kind of framing it through the lens of the previous model of transportation, right? And it was Henry Ford who said, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have wanted a faster horse. And I think that that's a limitation that we're suffering from right now, because we're taking the work that we're doing in transforming our experiences and framing it through, this is going to basically be the same as a developer, or this is basically going to be the same as a tester. And we're casting the method of production that's coming through transformational change through the lens of history. And there's other examples of how the influence of the horse has impacted cars, something to do with road widths and the carriage widths and the amount of space between tracks, which is defining the size of our freeways today. And sure, it's a lot of physical infrastructure and reason for that, but that's really not what we want. Right? We want to do something different. We want to do something better. And this talk is all about that, because a lot of the things that we're seeing right now in the marketplace is coming out of a scarcity mindset, right? People are like, oh my gosh, we got to do this smaller. We have to do this faster. We have to lay off half of our workforce. We have to do more with less, right? And I think that that's probably the wrong way to think about it. And instead of that, and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to cut my workforce in half, and I'm going to have AI tools to leverage the 50% of the people are here. Why not try to make twice as much money? Why not ship more stuff, or do more things, or do more bigger things, and approach it from an abundance mindset and go farther with it, right? And that's the challenge that I'm kind of putting down today. At a conversation, I was hoping he'd be here, a friend of mine, Josh, who's been doing AI stuff for a while. He's done some really crazy stuff and some really fun stuff. We were having coffee, and he made this interesting prediction. I'm like, you should put that up on LinkedIn. Next year, His predictions, we're going to see 1 million new games through the advent of AI tooling, right? That's a lot of ideation. That's a lot of creation, a lot of new stuff that's going to be coming into the marketplace. It's terrifying if you think you want your game to be successful, but at the same time, this is the future that we're gearing towards. You're going to see more. You're going to see better. You're going to see more interesting stuff. So with that in mind, how do you differentiate yourself from these 1,000 games? And I'm hoping the next part of this conversation is me opening the door to a little cage, let your bird brain out, and thinking a little bit more about what the opportunity really looks like. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what AI should be doing inside of your games. This is kind of, the way that we're thinking about things now. If anybody's seen Zoolander, they were told the files are in the computer and they try to smash them out because they're not thinking about it the right way. I think that's kind of the discovery moment as to where we are in the games industry, is that we have to think about things correctly and the right way to use these tools. So this is a video game, right? World of Warcraft. I play some World of Warcraft. You got lots of little bars, you got lots of little buttons, there's numbers on the screen, there's maps, there's all kinds of stuff. And this represents, a pretty comprehensive game experience. But how did we get here? And why are there so many gosh darn buttons all over the place, right? And the buttons are there because when we started building games, we discovered that we had challenges with the amount of stuff that we could put on the screen. And one of the challenges with that is you have to design systems that people interact with and build all of those systems and set them up and test them and do all of this stuff. And that's a lot of work, right? What if you could get rid of all that and you just have the game as something that you can interact with? So instead of all these goofy buttons on the screen that are put on by this team of developers that don't have enough time to build all the stuff that you want, and putting all these things up saying, hey, you press this button here, you press that button there, and you have all these guides and rails that you put on stuff. Instead, you're basically doing something a little simpler, and you're building a system where anything can happen. And you don't have to sit down and say, okay, you know what? We have this little construct. It's a part of the system. We've constrained our AI work to be this conversation inside this little tiny piece. Throw all that away. Take away the constraints and say, you know what should we really doing with this? Because on the end of the day, on the left-hand side, we got this pile of Lego. And on the right-hand side, we've got this vision of what we want to build with it. Now, if anybody's looking at this picture, you're probably thinking, you know what? That Lego is your development team, and on the right is the game that you're trying to build. And the deep truth is you're not going to be getting the big 3,000 piece Lego. You're going to get this little thing because you only have a team of 10 or maybe 100 developers to put all your stuff together. So you got to cut some corners, right? You can't put in something where you can say, I want to have the slushy sitting on the table melting in slow motion so that people realize there's time dilation happening near the table. Nobody's going to build that in their game. It's too much work, too much risk, and too much craziness, right? So instead, let's think about what you could do instead to make that more immersive and deeper and more fun in your game. And what you can do is say, with AI on the right-hand side, you're going to have a hell of a lot more Lego so you can build the thing that you want. And what is that going to look like at the end of the day? You've got your cool old game engine. You're doing some crazy stuff. And, we want to take LLMs and put that into the system to replace some of these things so that you don't have to think about the scene graph or the game or physics. A lot of that stuff is going to be taken away from you. So instead of you having this gigantic screen full of all these buttons and things that are constrained by your development resources, what if this was your game, right? You're walking around, you're seeing things. There's no buttons anymore. Those are all gone. The world is interactive, the same as the one that you're walking around with today, and touching things and picking stuff up. What kind of a game would that be? Would that be any fun? And the deep truth it is, because you see these things pop up all the time, these little escape rooms, right? It's just literally a room full of game widgets with no UI prompting, and people have to figure out what the fun is. I did one of these a little while ago with actually some folks from my WoW guild. We had a meetup, and we were we had a couple of beers. We decided to do this, and apparently we got a compliment from the operators at the end for almost completing the hard mode game because they realized that we were all horribly drunk, and at the same time got most of the way through. It was a super fun experience and one that I'm going to treasure. Could literally, yeah, it is indeed game changing. But the deep truth is, this is what the future of games is going to look like, right? We're going to move away from having all these buttons and widgets that are basically imposed on us by the constraints of the design team, because the LLMs are going to enable us to put all that stuff in there, right? All you're gonna have to do is just touch something on the screen or say something. Hey, I want to go to that tree trunk and I want to chop off some pieces so that I can start a fire. Good luck doing that in an MMO. Nobody's going to say that that's going to be a subsystem that we're going to put into it. But understanding that approximation of a tree trunk is something that can be fed into an LLM engine on the back end and modified in real time while you're sitting there, that's coming, right? And what does this have to do with anything? And why should you care about this? Is because this is what the future of games is going to look like. And it's a little scary right now because everyone's like, oh man, the amount of work that's going to have to do that, and the amount of risk you're going to have to take, and the LLMs are so slow, and the deep truth is that those things are getting better every day. You can put a couple-year-old model like a Gemma 3 engine on your phone natively right now, which says in a couple years' time, this is going to be ready for mass market. And in order for that to be successful, this is the part of technology that I've been steeped in since the dawn of my career 30-ish years ago, is to get in and start doing stuff that's ahead of the curve and on the bleeding edge is what they call that. And I've been 2, 5, sometimes 10 years early to a marketplace, and it's painful, but at the same time, that's where we are with this AI stuff right now. And so as we're building these things out and sitting down and saying, okay, who's going to be the first person to come to market with a completely all rendered AI native experience with not a single button in it? That's going to be what the future of games looks like. And the first person there, Ve Victus, to the victor go the spoils. How'd I do for time?
Pretty good, I'd say. Um,
I'll have my AI evaluate you and let you know.
All right.
Slow.
So that's my take on the space. Happy to answer.
How do you want our
questions.
screeny? Probably.
Oh, you ready for that now?
Yeah. What do you want us to do? There are no hearts. No hearts. Please.
All right. Pick your least favorite emoji that you see in Slack on a daily basis and try to do it for your camera.
the heart again.
I don't use emojis. I'm from the wrong generation. Anyway, 3, 2, and oh, guys, sorry, we're taking a picture. We need you to turn your cameras on, whoever can. Okay, 3, 2, and 1. Okay.
Right. That was a long time
so
to hold the
much.
grimace pose.
Yeah, that was interesting. I can tell you we didn't get the picture right, so we need to do it again, but I'm kidding.
Right.
Who wants to go with the first question? I want a really tough one for John, please.
Hey, I'd like to jump in as UX UI person. I think that you're correct in that training LLMs on these systems are going to have benefits far beyond even kind of what you were alluding to here. You only had a lightning talk, so I'm sure you have other ideas about, progressive learning and things like that. What happens for me, I think about like tutorials being more L1, L2, L3, where can you figure it out on your own? Can you figure out with some in-fiction hints? Can you then, or do you have to be told explicitly, right? And hopefully you never get to L3. Like the voice of God just says, read this text and we'll figure it out. So for me, that's always an interesting design challenge. For certain genres of games, I think that let's not forget that talking is much slower than clicking. So I'm playing a first-person shooter. So the vision that you have, and I know you're just pushing it sort of to the extreme there, but I think that from my perspective, voice and chat and typing is never going to be a replacement for some of those things. What it will be, I noted it here, is like, for God's sake, I just want to get all my arrows to my shooter guy, and I have to do 17 clicks to do that. Whereas like just give all my arrows to the shooter guy, right? As a natural thing. And then accessibility is something that, that I think I would be, that I think is going to be a real big win for this type of thing. My question, I guess, is, how are as someone right now who's choosing what projects to do and prototypes to do and things like that, for me, it's riskier to sort of go full born out, and maybe that means I'll lose out in the long run. But I also don't want to just see I've got a hammer of UX and everything is a nail to be solved. Where do you see that kind of in terms of the opportunity space? Where should I go all in on just like the totally out there thing? Should I stay conservative? Do a bit of both? I don't know.
Well, I've got 5 kids still living at home, so I can't go hog wild and go all in, right? You have balanced near and long-term cash flow. But if you look at where the industry is going, and if you've checked out Roblox, the UGC platforms out there, going all the way back to all the original ones, they are now mass market, right? I got some kids that are older now, and they are they are Roblox native and they're aging up with the platform, and the platform is accommodating them. The folks at the Roblox party at GDC were super stoked when I told them the ages of my older two kids that still play, because that's one of their goals and they're very successful with it, right? And what you're going to find is the reason Roblox is successful is because people are making experiences within the platform for themselves. And the notion of we have a tutorial and we have a game design, in 5 years' time, those are going to be dead concepts. You're going to have a play experience where you come in and you're going to sit down and you're like, you know what, this is what I want to play today. And you're going to go all in based on what tastemaker is going to come the closest to what you got. And if it's not there, they're just going to do it themselves. There's going to be no tutorial because you don't need to have a set of rails to guide people to click on the button. And I feel this very acutely because I was once involved with evaluating 100 social games for a Facebook competitor every week. And the number of times I had to sit through a set of screens where it has a bunch of pointing arrows all over the place saying, you know, click this button, click that button. The buttons are awful, right? And the tutorial doesn't teach you how to play the game. It teaches you how to click buttons when you're prompted. And so in the future, you're going to sit down and say, you're going to find a game that's going to be related to a pool of people that you like to play with, or a pool of characters that you identify with. And the game is going to write itself while you're playing it based on what you're either touching or tapping or clicking or gesturing.
Sorry about the arrows. When we made Frontierville at Zynga way back when, we had exactly 4 arrows. And then the PMs decided that the way to optimize the funnel was to have a 97-page FTUI, and you could measure drop off at each missed button click. So apologies that you had to deal with the fallout from our land of no and only 1 arrow at a time and maximum of 3 or 4 arrows before you actually start playing.
So that's awesome. Well, thank you for that. I sent the first mobile poke through Facebook ever when they were developing the API. Actually, Margaret Wallace, who's here, was the recipient of the first mobile poke ever that was done. So I feel guilty for mobile social as well in some ways. All right, other questions, but it's kind of, like I said, this is a brain breaking moment, right? You know, it's like the notion of building a game is going to go into how are you creating your characters, and you're going to see a lot more successes of people who are going to be like the Critical Role crew. You know, they have a pretty good size following for people in the D&D tabletop space. They're on their 4th campaign. They crowdfunded and eventually put together a live Amazon Prime Video TV series that's really good and fun to watch, right? And you're going to see people who are going to create pools of ideas and characters and concepts and fun. And you're not going to have a lot of, you know, 1 billion player games anymore, or Farmville or Frontierville size audiences. You're going to have a lot of people who are very successful with a niche of between 100,000 to 4 million people following their interesting stuff to say, hey, this is something that my cool characters are doing, and interacting with them in ways that are going to be come up with on the spot. You know, it's like, here's my favorite brand of characters. Let's pick Doctor Who. I like Doctor Who, right? You know, I want to play a Doctor Who game today, but you know what? I want to go with the Doctor and I want to bring him into Fortnite with me. So I need to have a battle royale with all the Time Lords, right? So, you know, and then the next day you're going to be like, hey, I want to play a bunch of, you know, match 3 games or match 2 games, and I'm going to match TARDISes or, you know, pictures of the various reincarnations of the Master or something, right? Question from the audience there. Do we think VR sets will change the way we interact within the game? I always think that VR is going to be a niche dongle for a handful of experiences for people of privilege, because you need a certain amount of space and a certain amount of money to buy a good VR set. I don't think it will ever penetrate the mass market. I think you will have a decent amount of AR games because pass-through is easier to do than pure VR. And the challenge of building a VR experience with the power consumption and the heat management and the battery backpack you need to make it really successful with all the CPU power is not going to be something that the average person is going to want. I think that we're going to skip past VR into AR. And as soon as the mass market use case is there, you're going to see a lot more AR devices in the marketplace.
John, Rod also posted a question. If you can,
yeah,
read it out.
I can repeat it if you like. So it was more John, and I'm sure everybody on the call, is familiar with this. As you know, every kind of UX change that we've seen in our business has generated different kinds of game designs, and different kinds of players have developed new tastes based off either a form factor or a way of interacting. And I happen to +1 your belief that AI is going to make more dynamic gameplay. But what kinds of interactions and what kinds of gameplay do you think that AI may spark within ourselves as developers and of course the customer?
Well, this is an interesting question. Yeah, and sorry for missing that. Jumped right into the VR one, probably because I've done some VR stuff and I just wanted to nail that. That's not a nail. The hammer's just hitting the board and going, nothing's happening here. Sorry. I'm really interested in this one because my big thing is I like to play D&D. I like to be the game master, and I have a friend of mine from 20 years ago reconnected with me after seeing something I did on the internet. He's like, you know what, your BBEG is still the benchmark that I've been unable to hit as a dungeon master. He is still the most terrifying bad guy that I've ever conceived, that I've ever had to face, right? And I think what you're going to find is people who can create bad guys like that, or people who can create those experiences that have those deep engagements, are just going to take it to the next level that you're going to have. And if you listen to folks like the dudes who founded Blizzard, or some of the people in the industry who got into this, is like, I'm trying to rebuild the tabletop experience that I had with my friends, or we play these games and we want to share and we want to do all this stuff. And Mike Morhaim's new company, they have a new thing where they have something that's on their phone that's playable, visual experiences for everybody, and you have a private viewing space as well, kind of like Hold'em poker, right? You're going to see that impact coming, where the difference in perception of the things around you are going to be different from the other people and the other actors in the space, and some of them might not be real. So you're going to have deeper experiences that will be more profound based on the quality of the tastemakers. And the deep secret to building a really good bad guy is that they have to be the hero of their own story. And the reason that my bad guy still creeps my players out when I do it is they look at the players like they're the bad guy and that they're crazy. And all their dialogue is like, you guys don't know what horrible thing you're doing. And then the players stop and think about it, and then they argue with themselves for a while. It's exploring the shades of gray. And a lot of people have their own definitions for games, and my definition of a game is it's managed conflict. And whether it's managed conflicts with the environment or other people, so you can't have it without conflict. And one of the challenges that AI has right now is that it's too gosh darn agreeable. I have somebody who built an AI shopkeep, and he beat it senseless at negotiating every time. And it was almost to the point of breaking the AI to get it to the point where it would negotiate hardcore and do things that made sense from its own perspective.
We have a couple more questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can quickly go over Henry's, because it's, I think, related to your recent remark on D&D. So what does BBE?
So let me go down here to the bottom. Big bad evil guy, right? So you're the bad guy in your game.
Yeah. And Mark had a question.
Yeah.
You want to read it out? So, as tools for game creation become more accessible, is the role of the professional game creator dead?
The role of the professional specialized game craftsman is dead. If it's not dead today, it's dead next year. It is dying right now. You are going to find more game creators that are professional game creators, who are the sole voice or part of a committee of voices who are going to be creating games than ever before. The notion of a game creator is the person who's responsible for spawning a franchise or coming up with the ideation. That is an incredibly tiny group of people right now. The number of people, and you think about that, I've tried to build a top 10 list of people who've built Platinum Plus franchises across multiple industries, and it's less than 10 people. I couldn't name all 10 right now, but I'll give the one example I always use to give to people. It's like, David Jaffe, right? God of War, Twisted Metal. He was hugely successful in two competing genres that are very much unlike. There's nothing in common between those games. How many people have transcended genre like that, right? The number of game creators out there is frighteningly small for the games industry. And how do you become a professional game creator? You have to be able to take your idea, build enough of it, go to a green light committee, fight like hell to beat every other idea that's out there in order to get it turned into something that's produced and in the marketplace. And these days, the only people who get those shots on net are people who said, I've done something in the past, right? And it's really hard to break in, and that's going away. And the ability to find and appeal to the audience is what we're going to see as the future.
If I make the argument from the other side, look at something like movie making, which is very accessible with iPhones in hand and the ability to create movies super easily with the tools available. Tools are publicly accessible. Their devices already have. Yet we still have a movie industry, and we still have Netflix, and we still have those high quality. Is there space for both? Is there space for quick, personalized game creation experiences and the larger, high quality, let's say cinematic style games?
I think that's true for now. I don't know what statistics you're looking at for Hollywood. Holy moly, they are hemorrhaging, and they haven't even got hit by it yet, right?
Yeah, I use
cost
Netflix
per minute,
for an example.
Yeah, they're also, their prices are going up and the number of releases they have are going down. They just haven't hit the crunch point yet. There is a black swan event coming for streaming services sometime soon. And whether it's going to be the $30 a month price point and every 3-year refresh on Stranger Things, that's going to be the point at which people are going to be like, I don't want to pay for this. I can go watch whatever it is the Critical Role people are doing for free, right? The audiences of people who are on YouTube watching stuff now. Take a look at the Jimmy Kimmel show. 30 million people watched his thing on YouTube versus 6 million on ABC, right? This is where the audiences are going. And it's those barriers of cost and the barriers of accessibility are going to put challenges out there, right? Will there be places for people to go and do, movie viewing and whatnot? I think that's going to be a niche experience at a, like even if I take my kids to go to the movie theaters now, it's $50 a head with popcorn and ticket, right? That's only sustainable at a mass market scale for so long, right? And I think that's coming. There are a lot of people building startups right now that are targeting the cost of the production minute, and they're looking at shorts and anything less than an hour for their first generation of content. But it's not going to be very long before that's going to be sustainable to a 2-hour mark. And then it's going to come down to tastemaker and experience, right? And one of the challenges that Hollywood's going to have with that might be the same challenge that the people in the games industry is having with that, is that they don't see it coming, or they don't want to see it coming, and they don't want to learn the tooling and embrace the methodologies. And as a result by that, there's going to come a period of time when the people who said, I don't want to do this, are going to get hit by a truck of content from their competitors that are native in these tools that are going to outperform them.
Yeah.
John, thank you so much. Thank you everyone I've met for the first time. Really nice meeting you. And until next time.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you for indulging me. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you,
so much,
probably.
John.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.